Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are looking forward to taking you through and telling you a little bit more about our emerging proposals for the Hartree development. We're going to start with some introductions. So thank you for coming along. I'm Frances Wright. I work for Town, one of the developers involved in preparing proposals for the Hartree site. And in a minute, I'm going to ask Ben and Angela to introduce themselves properly. But first of all, I've got a little bit of housekeeping to run through. So the first thing is this webinar is being recorded, and it will be recorded right through until the end of the presentations when we get to the questions, when we'll stop recording. It's being recorded so that it can go on YouTube and be linked to our website for those people who couldn't make it along today. So that's the first bit of housekeeping. The next bit is, as we go through the presentations, if you have any questions, do post them in the Q&A and we'll try and answer them as we go through and pick them up in the presentation, and we may also where we need to come back to them at the end as well. And then finally, we've got a finish time of 7:30 to allow plenty of time for questions, but it may well be that we're able to finish earlier, but we hope you'll be able to stay to whenever we finish. And then last bit of housekeeping is we're going to post a link to a simple one-page survey into the chat for you during the course of the presentation, so that you can give us your thoughts on the emerging proposals. So once that goes in, you can open that up and have a look at it. A few of the questions relate to specific topics covered in the presentation, and I'll flag that as we go through. And I think that's it. I'm hoping that my assistant can put the link in for people for the chat. There it goes. So if you open it up, it's one page. It's got introductory question and then some questions that are specific to different topics, and then some sort of concluding questions. Very quick. Right, with that, Ben, can I ask you to introduce yourself and then hand over to Angela to introduce yourself, and then we'll come back and Ben will kick off the presentation proper and Angela was going to do most of the legwork this evening.
Of course. Thank you, Frances. Hi, everyone. My name's Ben Cartwright. I'm a development director at
Ben, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if anyone else can.
Thumbs up from Angela. So I'm hoping this is audible. I'll start again. My name is Ben Cartwright. I'm a development director at Landsec U&I. We are the appointed master developer at Hartree, and working in partnership with Frances and colleagues from Town. Together, we're the ones responsible for bringing forward the master plan on site. Angela?
Thanks, Ben. Hi, I'm Angela. I'm an urban designer and architect that work for Shalanda Sjöberg, and we're based here in Stockholm. Yeah, I'm very excited to be working in Cambridge in the UK. Thanks.
Thank you, Angela. Ben, do you want to kick off with your introduction to?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I work for a company called Landsec U&I. We are a specialist mixed-use regeneration developer, for those that don't know us, and we are a part of the wider Landsec group, who are a FTSE 100 listed property company. As I mentioned, we're working in partnership with Frances and her colleagues at Town, who are a small profit with purpose developer, and we are master developers of Hartree. We were appointed into our role as the master developer of the project by Anglian Water and Cambridge City Council, who are our landowner partners, and that was back in 2018, so about 5 years ago. Working with both of those landowners, we are essentially responsible for delivering the vision, the placemaking, the design, the planning, and the actual delivery of the master plan at Hartree. The Hartree site is, in its majority, the existing Anglian Water Cambridge wastewater treatment plant, alongside some of the Cambridge City Council owned land that sits just to the south of that. By way of context, the treatment works itself is currently going through its own planning process. That's being managed directly by Anglian Water, and that's to apply for its own permission to relocate the existing operation that takes place on site. That's all subject to planning permission, but the development of the Hartree site and today's presentation that Angela will be giving details what our vision is for what becomes of the existing site, subject to it being relocated as part of that planning process. Our site sits at the heart of the planned new district for North East Cambridge, where there is an emerging planning policy in the form of an area action plan, which is being brought forward as part of the emerging local plan. And the purpose of that is to deliver a new residential and employment district, which sits between the existing Cambridge North Railway Station and the Science Park. That draft AAP envisages the delivery of over 8,000 homes across the entire district. And of those 8,000, circa 5,600 of those will be delivered on our site at Hartree, and that will sit alongside new workplaces, retail and community facilities. Over the past 5 years, we've been working pretty hard to develop what our vision is for Hartree, and we're now at the really exciting stage within the project where we have on board a full professional team to begin to develop that vision as part of the master plan and start working towards an actual planning submission in mid to late 2024. As we've started to develop the master plan with the team, a critical part of that work has been an extensive consultation exercise, which Francis has been leading on, and that's been designed to enable us to get tangible feedback from a range of key stakeholders and the local community on our emerging plans. That consultation process has taken us to a number of different locations within Cambridge over the past couple of years, particularly this summer, and we've had a number of conversations with different people. And the intention of that is to essentially get as many views from as many people as possible to input into our emerging designs. Tonight is the final event of that this summer's schedule, and I'll hand over to Angela, who leads on our design at Hartree, to take you through the detail of those proposals.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to share my screen so you can all see what I'm seeing. Should be this one. Okay, can you all see the screen?
Yep.
Yes, good. Okay, so yes, as Ben, I'll just make it full screen. Okay, so thanks, Ben. So yes, as Ben mentioned, we've been working up a number of proposals and through a number of tests and a lot of experimenting for the Hartree program. So today I'm going to take you through a little bit of what's on our desk at the moment. From overarching emerging master plan to the types of spaces that we're looking to create at Hartree. So we'll go through first a little bit about who we are at KS as a practice. So we are based in Stockholm. We've got offices in Malmo and as well as in London. We do a range of different projects at different scales, and we have been doing that for a really long time, a long time before I started working here. We work with all sorts of different materials in all sorts of different combinations with local councils, different sorts of community groups, different sorts of residential structures in terms of working with co-ownership, housing association, different sorts of private developers, and a whole bunch. But we're just one of many in a team working at Hartree. We're leading on the master plan design, and we've in together with a bunch of other architects, namely Numa and Alison Brooks, Horwath Tompkins, Fitz Studio and Bell Phillips Architects, as well as a bunch of other consultants and planners who we're collaborating with. The brief that we've got to deliver on Hartree is an interesting one in that it is very much focused on delivering a place for the future. It tries very hard to imagine a place that could be robust and resilient for a future that obviously we're not there yet. It takes into account a lot of the global climatic objectives that we're trying to reach through building new areas of cities and new urban settlements worldwide. And the challenge here on Hartree is also delivering that on a site that obviously has been occupied before, and it's got an existing context in it. So there's a lot of things to learn, and there's a lot of things to go from in terms of building a new place. So some of the key things that we're trying to do in the brief that I'll point out here are building 5-minute walkable neighbourhoods. In a city like Cambridge, it fits very well because the city of Cambridge has got very, very strong walking and bike riding population. 5,600 homes delivered on the site. It's the biggest element of the delivery of homes in the whole NEC area, which is the area in the northeast of Cambridge where we'll be. It's got good links to public transport networks. It's got the aim of being net zero carbon, and we're hoping to do that with a combination of building approaches and master planning approaches and surface design approaches that leads to a pioneering new place in Cambridge, based in Cambridge. So the site, I'm sure that you're all aware, is in northeast of Cambridge. So we've got the city centre down here, North Cambridge Station sitting here, and then it's on the site at the moment of the existing wastewater treatment plant. The site, as you can see here, is sitting, it's got one edge that's along the train line. Maybe just flick forward a little bit now. And then we've got the rest of the NEC area over this side here with the A14 running along the top of it. So it's sitting right on the edge of the Fens landscape, overlooking the river. We've got a collection of different neighbourhoods in the adjacent area. But I guess the one that's the strongest connection is the one that's directly to the west of the site, which is the Innovation District in terms of its location closest to the site. We've got the makeup of that community is quite different to the other communities that are in closest proximity to where we're looking for Hartree. I think that's what actually makes it, the site and the composition of the site needs to answer to all of these existing communities. So you can see that because of the nature of the site and the history of the site in the past, you can see, especially compared to where central Cambridge is, there's quite a spread out nature of existing educational sites, community food growing sites, places to shop, play spaces. So the Hartree site itself is going to have to work really, really hard to deliver a lot of social amenity, public open space amenity to the people that are going to be living and working there. There's another view looking back towards central Cambridge. In here we can see the business park to the south of the site, as well as the guided busway that runs along it. That's setting up quite a strong structure through the whole NEC area. The L shape of the site itself, going over the top of the existing industrial estate that's here today. Over to Chesterton Fen, we've got the A14 running along the top edge of the site, over to the north. And you can see in this image a lot of the existing landscape structure that exists on the site today in terms of mature tree networks, the first drain running along this edge of the site down here. And they're all things that we're trying to take into account of when we're looking to bring forward proposals for what's on site. Another central part of our design process is the development of the quality of life strategy, where useful projects have been developing. It's based on Kate Raworth's donut economics, which sets out how we can be delivering spaces for a 21st century economy in terms of meeting all the needs of meeting the needs of the planet as well as people on the planet. So this vision aligns with the promises of the project itself in terms of a promise to the people, to the city, and to the planet for bringing forward a site that meets the objectives needed in terms of our approach to sustainability in the future. I think it's been a really interesting part of the project so far with how embedded a lot of these systems need to be into the design in order for them to have a long-lasting effect and a very deep effect. It's not enough to just put some solar cells onto roofs or think about some SUD treatments in streets. The sustainability strategy goes very deep into the design proposals, from developing the opportunity for construction processes to have circular design principles, for the energy strategy that will be powering these homes and workplaces to be part of a greater grid, that there should be sustainable modes of transport. And of course, that all needs to be supported by a sustainable movement network that allows for and encourages more active modes of travel and makes it more difficult to own, I suppose, to own a car and live in the same sorts of ways that we have been living in the past. I think another real central part of the sustainability strategy and design as a whole is how we deal with water in the future, in terms of collecting grey water, reusing water within the building, and also using water and catching water within the wider urban space environment. So we'll jump into the emerging master plan now. So we're looking, as I mentioned before, the real focus of the master plan as a whole is how can we make walkable, enjoyable, bike-friendly neighbourhoods where the things that you need in your everyday life are very, very close at hand. We're working to develop the structure of the master plan through the lens of these 6 spatial frameworks. We're looking especially at the edges and the connections of how the site can open itself up from being a very introverted, because of its use today, a very introverted looking site. So what new routes can we bring through the site and, well, into the site and then through the site in order to open it up, particularly when it comes to new and improved cycle networks and pedestrian networks? And how can you get around the site and through the 3 neighbourhoods that we're looking to build up by car-less streets that allow you to move around on bike and pedestrian without having to navigate vehicularised movement. We're also looking at what kind of big structural anchors are needed in the site in order to provide open space amenity and are giving a structure to the way that we cluster uses. So, for instance, we're calling it the high street as a way of looking at the way that there can be an anchored kind of main street through the site that would collect and cluster different sorts of employment uses, offering a range of different employment types. That could be from co-working spaces to smaller studio spaces, or maybe even slightly larger office building formats that fit into the local context of innovation hubs and the other types of employment uses that are directly around opposite part of the innovation science park. The play line is also a really important structural element of the master plan. It kind of says what it does on the box, in that it's a series of smaller interconnected parks that run right through the centre of the master plan. These really programmed, specifically programmed spaces allow for this strategic route to go from the lower part of the site up and across, and hopefully over the railway to the fens. And it also locates the schools within a central part of the master plan so that you can get to school without having to be dropped off by a car. You could hopefully walk or ride your bike and particularly so with young kids, so that it's a safe environment to do that. So we're hoping that the playline also becomes a real destination for people in the wider area to be able to come and enjoy the site. And that brings us to the last leading strategy, which is the strategic routes through the site. So opening the site up to the south, to the communities directly to the south, to the employment opportunity communities to the west, and then connecting into the Jane Costin Bridge over the A14 and up to Milton and Lee. So the three main thinking about this, the three sort of parts we're looking at is the street-based urbanism. It's a mix of different sorts of homes and different sorts of workplaces, and that you should have nature on your doorstep. So this is what's on our desk at the moment in terms of an illustrated master plan, or what we're looking at. You can see here that we've got the main street coming up and through the master plan and connecting into the new Water Beach link that will go down Cowley Street and Cowley Road and down into Cambridge City and into the Jane Costin Bridge and up across and over to Water Beach and Milton. You can see the play line in here, which is a collection of lots of different sorts of play spaces and sports spaces, hopefully growing spaces, as well as different sorts of combinations of parks. So not just flat green grassed parks, but also biodiversity corridors that lift existing habitats and species that are existing on the site today. It's also good to notice in this one how important the first drain corridor along the edge of the site here is in providing a real sort of buffet of spaces along the edge of the site and activating potential to activate all of these fantastic homes along the edge of the site. And then we're also looking into how we integrate parts of Anglican Water's legacy elements that they leave behind on site into how we maybe approach water, integrating larger bodies of water in order to attenuate that water on the site. Other things to point out in here is that we've got three major squares or centres. They become the centre of the three neighbourhoods that we're looking to provide within Hartree. And those centres will have things like shops, a school, community uses. They are normally very close to a mobility hub, which inside of that you'll have car parking spaces, of course, but also spaces for bike parking. And at ground floor, most importantly, there'll be community uses or shared uses that activate that ground floor. So there might be sports activities or different sorts of retail uses at ground floor that help that building become a really important part of providing different services and amenities at Hartree. In terms of heights, we are looking at providing a variety of heights across the site, depending on which edge we're looking at and which region of the landscape that we're looking at. So closer to the fens and the railway line, we're looking to slightly step down the scale. There might be maybe slightly more houses located in this neighbourhood as we step down in scale. Along the A14, we're stepping up in scale, hopefully to help using the building forms at least to attenuate the acoustic impact of the A14 with the help of other noise barriers and other technical systems. The main street going through the centre of the master plan will obviously have some height attached to it, as will this lower section of the southern neighbourhood. And that's so that it, without town and visual impact landscape assessment, we've been looking at different sorts of views that are from around the site and where we can accommodate or cluster uses so that they minimise the visual impact of the development from key views, particularly those off to the east of the site, and how we can help the building forms fit into the existing context of settlement patterns that are around the site. In terms of transport and movement, we've proposed that we would have a new bus line or an existing bus line extended through the site, and that bus line would then have a couple of bus stops through the master plan, which would link up mobility hubs, neighbourhood centres, in particular then schools, because they're located quite close to the neighbourhood centres. We're quite passionate about providing really good public transport on site to make sure that from your home you're not having to walk too far to get to a bus stop, and that those bus stops are really good quality in terms of safe, well lit, dry spaces to stand while you're waiting for the bus. We're still in discussions about how often that bus comes, but it will come through the site and go past North Cambridge Station, and then obviously up and around and then down into Cambridge itself. Okay, and then that brings us to the different sorts of street hierarchy. So the bus will follow the main primary street through the site, which is this dark blue line, and then we've got a number of servicing streets that come off that one. The street structure is designed so that it really heavily limits through traffic through the site, while also promoting the green lines are the totally car-free streets. So I would say that the pink lines are car-less streets, in that cars can drive there, but you'll be directed, if you do own a car and you're parking in the mobility hub, that you'll be directed to there first. There will, of course, be opportunities to park your car close to home to do packing or unpacking or moving. And of course, there'll be blue badge parking and other opportunities for servicing and deliveries within the site itself. But the aim from the council's objectives is to try to minimise the number of trips that happen around the site due to the number of trips caused from people coming to and from the site. So it's a very delicate balance that we're trying to maintain with number of cars in the site and the number of movements through the site, because it also affects the overall street profile and what we can actually do with the public realm that's around those streets. So we're going on to then types of homes that we're looking to provide at Hartree. We've talked about in the past, I've talked about in the past that we're very, very passionate about there being many places to call home around your home. There'll be a lot of different sorts of profiles of spaces as we walk through into Hartree. There'll be a collection of, say, wide. These are inspirational images, by the way. They're not particularly of Hartree themselves. But I think they illustrate a really good range of different sorts of spaces that we're looking to provide at Hartree, in terms of more wild landscapes that are open for people to enjoy and that are destinations maybe for different sorts of sports activities or picnics on the weekend. That there is a really strong connection between learning spaces and nature, and those outdoor spaces that are safe to play and to be in. That there are community gardens and places to collect for different sectors of the community to come together and make something together. That there are wider places to meet, both your local neighbours, maybe around a shared dinner in a shared courtyard, or larger open spaces of a public square where you might run into your neighbour or run into someone that you know down the street. I think it all comes together in terms of making it feel more like a home. The more chances you get to run into people that you know. So this is a bit of an overview of a little snip cutout of Hartree. I think what we're really trying to work with is providing a really, and I hope you see it in this image, is a really healthy mix of different sorts of housing typologies, different formats, different collections of those different formats around a courtyard, or whether they're a point block that have a different sort of connection out to nature, that the schools are well integrated into the public realm, that they're definitely play on the way sorts of spaces that you can get to by bike or walking, that there are central places to meet as destinations, to do your shopping, to work. I'll flick through because we sort of zoom in a little bit and you start to see a little bit of detail. So for instance, if we're looking at a market square, we're doing many different tests to see how that market square might be used over different times of the day or night, and what kind of benefits do we get of those adjacencies to the market square in terms of connection to the main street, the kinds of shops that are on the ground floor, activating that square, how it might work with different sorts of public transport servicing that square, and adjacencies to wider park landscapes. It's also been really important for us to look at providing different sorts of activity in those park landscapes. This is a little section in here that you can see. I don't know if you can see my cursor down the bottom of the play line. And so we're looking to provide different sorts of performance spaces, play spaces for younger children, for youths, a little bit older children. What does play look like for adults? I think is something that we definitely having a lot of fun to look into. And as you can see in this image here, we've also got different types of row housing, also all mixed in together with apartment blocks and different sorts of apartment blocks. Within some types of the tenure mixes that we're looking at, we're also exploring different options for what sorts of things you could share within your home. And it's particularly interesting thinking about maybe things that different sorts of activities that make your home feel even bigger. So for instance, if you are living in an apartment, maybe you've got access to a shared laundry that everyone in your building could use. It's a safe and secure place. You make a booking and you can go down and do your laundry. But what would the benefit be then of having a space like that? If it's possible to do, say, 6 loads of laundry in 2 hours, is that something that's more preferable than maybe doing your laundry at home? What's the kind of water savings we would get from sharing our laundry spaces? There are different sorts of models for hobby rooms and maker spaces. Even the mailroom can be a really nice communal space for people to come together. Obviously, there's tried and tested roof growing spaces, and also just like the general communal room that's able to book. The people who are living in the apartment block, for instance, are able to book for their own private parties or group meetings or reading groups or whatever it might be. But these sorts of spaces are, I think they do provide a really good opportunity for different constellations of community to come together at different times. Could be a working bee day to do gardening together. It could even be, running into your neighbour at the bin where you're putting the things in. Opportunities to have outdoor picnics close to home, and obviously play. So it's when we're reflecting back on what will make Hartree an innovative place. I think a lot of it comes back to how do we build in flexibility into and adaptability into the actual master plan itself. Is it possible to think of the sizes of shops or ground floor spaces that could be a range of different uses over those different years, and how could they potentially transform from one thing to another? Is it possible to have interconnecting, say, apartments that could be just as simple as installing a door in between 2 apartments where you can have intergenerational living opportunities within those buildings? This is another example of maybe on the top level of some of those buildings, you might have a shared laundry or a meeting room or a type of co-working space that makes the home feel bigger than than what your own personal apartment is. So one other aspect that talking about sharing an open space is how we're providing a range of different spaces within the unbuilt space of Hartree. So as I touched on before, how do we integrate existing landscape features that are on site today in terms of prominent trees or species, different sorts of structures from angling water, and then how do we integrate different sorts of play elements into that open space. So we've been working quite closely with Lola, who are our landscape architects, in terms of understanding biodiversity gain across the site, how we can ensure that every building has a facade onto an open space area, which you can see in this diagram on this side, and how can we start to look at water sensitive design within that open space to make sure that we capture and utilise every drop. Also looking with Lola at the wider biodiversity network in terms of the wider landscapes and how we can use those as inspiration for what we can do on site, and particularly looking on site in terms of analysing existing structures that are on site today, like the first drain, larger prominent trees, the end of water cycle tanks that are safe enough to reuse for something. Of course, we'll have to test them and go through a risk analysis to see, to assess the different risks, but this is the process that we're in now in terms of looking at what really could be used on site and in what way. Fantastic taller concrete towers like this one, if it could be a climbing structure or maybe a playing structure or a water garden or a water feature, what sort of things can we embed back into the site based on what's there today? And of course, the material reuse of what's on site today, which is a lot of existing lava rocks and granite rocks that were used in especially the older filtration beds. So that was, I'll leave you on this image. That was a run through of where we are today.
Thank you very much, Angela. You managed to always make it sound slightly different every time and
Right.
my interest going. We've got a couple of questions coming in, and one I'd like to just take, which is a very basic one about how